Sup guys, Christos here. Now, roughly 16 months ago, I decided to rent out my 2-bedroom city centre apartment, and whilst for the most part things have been really great, they've been going really smooth and it's looked like a good decision that I made, a couple of things have happened during that time that if I would have known about them from the start, I probably would have never made the decision to become a landlord in the first place. So basically what I'm going to be doing in this video is talking about some of the hidden truths about buying your first rental property, so that if maybe you're interested in doing the same, you know exactly what you are getting yourselves into. So all I really ask from here is basically, if you did find some value from this video, make sure you do subscribe to this channel down below and pop on those notification bells. And yeah, let's jump straight into it. Now, just some quick details about the property. What I had was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom flat located in the centre of Norwich in the UK. It cost me originally £227,000 to buy, which at the time and still right now is considered generally quite a premium price for an apartment, but with the location it was in, it was considered a reasonable deal at the time, because if you've ever bought a property before, you know that location is going to be one of the main driving factors for the price. Now, for the past 16 months, like I did mention, for the most part, things have been absolutely great. It's generated me a brand new stream of passive income, and it's also played a big part in helping me quit my 9-to-5 job last Christmas. But like I did also mention, there has been a couple of major things that happened, and when looking back, if I would have known about them from the start, I may have not have even gone for being a landlord in the first place. And the first thing that we're going to start off with is the service charge fees. Now, when you live or rent an apartment, in most cases, if it's a block that you are living in, there will be service charge fees associated to that apartment. Now, this is basically a set fee that what you have to do is, if you're a property owner, you would have to pay a management company for the maintenance of that block. Not anything to do with your actual flat, just everything else on the outside. This could be cleaning the communal floors, servicing the elevator, painting the outside of the block, or maybe some gardening around the edge. You get the point, basically just looking after the block that your property is situated in. Now, whilst you're living in that property, it pretty much justifies itself for you. Now, like I said, when I was living there, I used to think, right, I don't have to do any gardening. I don't have to do any hoovering up on the communal floors. It always looks nice when I turn up. I don't have to worry about taking the bins out for the bin men to come and pick them up. I thought it was simply just a great trade-off of my money to gain back some extra hours of my time. However, the one thing that a lot of people do not think about, including me at the time, is that when you pay a service charge fee to a management company, unless there is some kind of special clause in your contract, they can pretty much charge you whatever they like, and that is exactly what happened to me. Now, like I said, when I was living there, the yearly service charge was around £1,500 a year, which, like I did mention, I thought was a reasonable price given the trade-offs that I had to take place. Now, what has happened now is that this fee has been raised to almost £2,300, and there is literally nothing I can do about it. Now, of course, there could be some legit reasons behind the scenes as to why these increases have taken place, but for me, it really just does feel like the management company is looking to increase their own margins, because I never saw any changes go around in terms of the maintenance of the property. So one thing that I am saying is that this is extremely important when deciding if you want to rent out a flat or buy a house to rent out, because with a house, there is no service charge fee at all, but of course, then you're going to have to rely more on the tenants looking after the outside of the property. But with a flat, you're paying a fee for obviously what should be a good service, but sometimes it doesn't benefit you or the property in any way. Another thing that actually happened to me the other day, and it made me think I'm never going to buy a flat ever again from a rental property point of view, that is a one-off charges like the one that I had the other day when the communal lift went down. Now, this absolutely had nothing to do with me or the tenants living in my property, yet as the landlord, I had to cover a percentage of that payment because technically I am a joint owner of that entire block. So really do take this into consideration when purchasing your first rental property. Yes, some flats may look cheaper and they are obviously normally less maintenance, but the fees can really add up, and this is not the nicest thing to have being at the mercy of someone that can raise those fees pretty much at any time they want. Okay, so that's the first real major truth said and done. Let's actually now talk about something a little bit more positive, and that is the steady income having a rental property has provided for me. But to be able to achieve this, you really do have to get two things right. The first thing is, of course, number one, you need to pick good tenants, which definitely is easier said than done. And then secondly, you need to know your basic numbers so you know exactly what your return is going to be from the property before you make that decision to rent it out. If you can keep these two things right, you're very much going to be set for some really consistent passive income for the foreseeable future. And so far, this has been a really good plus for me. Now, one thing you may or may not know, depending on how long you've watched this channel, is that I actually ended up quitting my 9-to-5 job at the end of December last year, and knowing that I actually had consistent income from my property to back me up for some of the low months within my business, I knew exactly how much I was going to be making from the property after you take off the mortgage, the service fees, all of that, before I actually decided to rent it out. And that was one thing that really helped. Now, in terms of what I mentioned about finding a good tenant, one quick tip for anybody looking to purchase a rental property when it does come to finding a good tenant, make sure you don't be afraid to ask personal questions and be completely upfront, because remember, they are essentially applying to live in your property, and you don't really need to sell it too much to them yourself. It's your property and you make the decision. They are applying to live where you own. Now, in terms of the questions that you should be asking, of course, all the obvious ones that you have to do, obviously credit checks and things like that. Maybe ask them how long they plan to stay in the property, because that's really important, because the more turnover you have with tenants, the more money you're going to lose, because you're going to have months where you're not going to make money. So it's really good to have someone that is planning to live there for the long term. But the one personal question that I really liked asking was what type of job you have, because at the end of the day, I know you're going to see their income from doing a credit check, but it's also really important to make sure that they're working in an industry that isn't likely to collapse, leaving them jobless and unable to pay the rent. Now, I was very lucky with my applications, as we were currently in the middle of a lockdown, which normally is going to be a very uncertain time for jobs, but my tenant had a really good job at the local hospital, which in most cases are jobs that are extremely safe and secure. But let's say someone applied that said they worked in the oil industry. Now, this may raise many concerns for me, because I know from family experience that the oil industry is very up and down, which means there could be some months where they're getting paid loads of money and they've got a great job, but it could literally be taken from them in an instant, which then could lead to them not being able to pay their rent. So asking personal questions, like I said, is going to actually help you build confidence with your new tenant. It's actually going to make you more money in the long run. Moving on to the next point, and that is another thing that I was completely uneducated about when renting out my flat, and that is understanding that flats and house prices don't rise at the same rate. Now, when I got started, I thought I was going to receive the rental income, and at the same time, the price of my property was going to go up in general, just as the way that the market went. Now, basically, I've been living in my new house here for about the same amount of time. And during that time, this house has actually gone up £32,000 in just 1 year, which is absolutely great. However, my flat that I have owned for an extra 2 years, I must say, is currently being valued roughly at the same price that I bought it at. Now, why is this? Number one, it could be that I didn't get a very good deal at the time, but in this case, I think I actually did. Or number two, which I think that has happened, is that the flat market is completely separate to the housing market. In fact, looking back at the price of my flat around about the first year, it actually dropped around 10k in value of the first year of owning it. And it's only just got back to this year where it's actually recovered back to its normal price. So my advice to anybody looking to get invested is keep in mind that if you are investing into a flat with the hope of some capital gains in the property price, it's not quite as simple as just simply picking a good house and a good location. I'm not here to say that investing in a flat is a bad thing to do. I'm just saying that there are a couple more factors that you do need to consider with buying a flat over a house that you do need to kind of take into consideration. So just a couple to mention, things like what floor you're flat on very much matters. The location, of course, that's very much obvious. The size of the flat, the finish of the the inside of the flat, so the flooring, the carpets and the worktops, the leasehold that the flat has left on it, because of course if it's a lower leasehold and it's getting closer to the expiry date, the value on that flat is going to go down. And the final thing, like I mentioned at the start of the video, you want to be finding out about the service charge and maybe whether they've got a clause where they can't raise it or anything like that. Just keep all of these things in mind when looking at different investment opportunities when it comes to a flat, because it's something that I actually didn't do, and if I did, I probably would have made a different decision and would have probably gone and bought a house. But there you have it, some of the truths about my first ever rental property, and probably some of the things that the gurus or the property agents trying to sell you the property won't actually tell you. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then I would really appreciate it if you dropped a like down below, and if you want to continue the conversation, then make sure you head over to my free Discord group, where we actually have a dedicated channel to both the US and the UK property market. Other than that, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.